All right, it's 2 p.m. today on September 28th, 2023, and I will call to order this Grand County Budget Advisory Board meeting. Those present are Grand County Treasurer Chris Kaufman and Board Member and Associate Commission Administrator Quinn Hall, Board Member Shaylee Bryant, Board Member Renee Baker, Board Member and Commissioner Kevin Walker, Board Member and County Commissioner Bill Winfield. We have Chief Deputy Clerk Auditor Dana Van Horn, who's taking minutes. Thank you, Dana. Myself, Grand County Clerk Auditor Gabriel Wojtek, Chair of this meeting and of this board and meeting. And we have here to give a department presentation. We'll have some other folks trickling in, but Corey Farnsworth is with us here because he'll be up first in our presentations and discussion section. Moving right along to action items. There were some draft minutes distributed for last week's September 21st, 2023 Budget Advisory Board meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes unless there were any corrections to be suggested at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve as written.
Second.
All right, got a motion approved by Baker, second by Kaufman. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
I said abstain because I wasn't here.
That vote passes 6-0 with Bryant abstaining. And then we'll just jump right along here into presentations and discussions. Department presentation number 1 is USU Extension Service. And here we have before us the Extension Director, Corey Farnsworth. Hello, Corey. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remember to share the screen this time first. And then pull up our budgeting software here. And I have already pulled up in the general fund. That's Fund 10. 4610 is extension service here. And so for starters, Corey, we've got our 24 budget request expenses here lined out in the blue column. There's some changes with the way this is structured. Do you want to explain a little bit to the board and to the members of the public how your program is funded, how your department is funded, where you're housed, all those sorts of things?
Yeah, so those of you who don't know, I'm Corey Farnsworth. I'm the Extension Director at USU. We cover Grand County. My position is Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Horticulture. We have another specialist that covers home and community problems and activities. And then we have someone over 4-H. Extension has 2 assistant professors. I'm one of them. USU pays our salaries and our benefits, and then the county funds our programming, everything that goes on in the county. We do have $1,000 for advertising and $2,000 for 4-H yearly that the state gives us to be used for those specifically. We do have a spot on the new Moab campus building, and that's rent-free. They've scheduled all that into USU's budget. So we're sitting pretty good there. Anything else, or just jump in the budget?
I think that's pretty good. Are there any other general structural questions that the board might have? Yeah, go ahead and jump right in. We've got 5 items here, and they do have some acronyms and things associated with them. So we'll want to kind of just give a brief description of what these, including that salary and going on down. Yes.
Okay, so the salary, the $37,000 is for our program assistant. USU has agreed to pay benefits for this individual, and then the county, our budget pays for their salary. So that's a full-time job for program assistant. She also covers 4-H programming. Let's see, what do you got next on the list? O&M. O&M is where we decided to put the money just for the last several years. The money has been kind of strewn all over, and it's been kind of difficult for us to purchase things for programming. Year to year, that money is different. What our needs are different, how we purchase. So we want to put that money into O&M for operating maintenance. So anything that is going in and out of the actual, the whole extension programming, funding, office supplies, materials, maintenance of equipment, and those kind of things. And then we have an Ag NR, and so that's agriculture and natural resources. And we have a home and community and a 4-H, and those are each for all our programming, whether we put on a workshop or 4-H materials or any advertising, travel for those individuals and their respective disciplines. That it's all separated out so that we can just do our thing as a department rather than having to split that up between each individual on each line item like we had in the past. So just to simplify it and straightforward it, we're not asking for a budget increase from last year. We'll stay the same, but we worked into our program assistant salary a 6% raise from last year from that total budget. So we're not changing anything there.
So yeah, as y'all see, this request plus the 37,231, which isn't in the blue column, that would equal 79,320, which was the approved budget for this year, this 2023 year. And I want.
In 2023, there was a large item for capital improvements.
I believe that that's where the salaries was placed.
Yeah, so our last individual that was over the extension has left. She was Catherine Hansen, for those of you who knew her. And she was brand new when she started, because Mike Johnson left shortly after. So there was a lot of money that was just put places that I'm not aware of why it was put those places, but according to USU, this is the way we use the money. So we're just trying to streamline it.
Do you think that was the salary from last year, Kevin? Because since they're not county employees, but if we put them up in the salary there, it wants to pull from one of our positions. I can make a position that's called like other agencies or something. We can make that work
Okay.
for this year going forward.
And that 35 is for sure her salary this year.
Yeah.
That makes sense, so that you don't want to actually have it be a county employee.
Yeah,
Doesn't make sense.
yeah, it's still USU, but yeah. So whatever works for you guys for that.
I mean, I guess what I was concerned about, it looked like even though the bottom line was staying the same, the way that money spent was changing quite a bit, but you're saying that's not true. It's being spent at pretty much the same place last time.
Yeah, and
We're
I
just
want
trying to code it correctly from now on.
And I wanted to pull this up as a further way to just explain. Corey proposed that we, offer this way of breaking down his budget. It's way simplified, but his explanation is that other counties code this way, as well as this is how he codes his program expenses to USU. And because this is a bit of a standalone thing, I'm fine with him, managing his budget in that way and us sort of mirroring the other ways just to reduce confusion. I think it'll help streamline. He did propose if we weren't able to create those new accounts for him, he would have used lines in this fashion to reach that same 79,320 level number. So I just wanted to. This is not something that I would do for really any county department as a way of like tracking expenses from year to year. But because USU extension it's kind of specific in how we fund it and support it, and its relation to the county is different. So I thought that this would be an acceptable way of doing it.
And so it looks like there was a big increase between 22 and 23. And is that increase just paying the salary that we're talking about?
The increase there was one employee, and now there's 3 people. So just all the new trainings for them going on, and different programming going on. Before it was just all at one person, Mike Johnson, could do. And so the first year after they hired Catherine Hansen, they decided we definitely need more funding in that. So that they went from 1 person to 2 people, and now we're at 3 people. But we think that this year's funds will support us for next year.
And there was also, Corey mentioned that the county isn't supporting the rent for his program to be housed at the new USU building. Historically, we had budgeted 10,000 for that pretty much every year, went up to 15, 22, not sure why. But that is no longer an expense associated with this program. And there are a couple, there's some capital requests that I advised Corey to present directly to the commission. A vehicle for your general program use. And I think that you've set up a time to potentially present before the commission and make those.
Yeah, I sent out an email, so I'm hoping we'll hear back. But yeah, just basically to discuss those options.
Okay. Any other questions right now for Corey? All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Let's see, did Tammy jump on?
Stop sharing. I think we're letting it.
Oh, it's a sharing thing. That makes. Should kind of just be a pop-up one. Next up on department presentations, we have Canyonlands Regional Airport. Tammy Howland, Airport Director, was going to join us virtually. Just waiting for her to pop in.
Because I'm waiting too, because then I was gonna offer to co-host the meeting.
But it's not.
Where are you? Who's your meeting?
I have like 2 Zooms open potentially.
Go back to your. Go to view, see if you can view the way you're up or right. You know, what do you, oh, this is different than.
Not to overstep my boundary, but I did hear through the grapevine that may not be able to make it today.
She's waiting. We just gotta figure out whether we're in or is.
Wrong grapevine now.
Click on that big, but yeah, right there.
Well, we've got Road Supervisor Bill Jackson in the house. And that roads department is the next scheduled presentation. So I reckon we get Bill up here, Bill Jackson. Grand County Roads and Bridges Supervisor. Is that the correct way?
Officially, yeah.
All right, we go back to sharing. We don't need any of those materials at the moment. You want to kind of work on
That
that?
was a crazy issue.
Yeah.
The economic development board.
Which is different.
Yeah.
Then everyone's hot and I'm just bring a sweater.
Sorry.
To change it, I agree.
Okay, I'll do
Bill
it.
and I agree.
Kevin's
That's
doing
so
it.
rare. You have to do it.
All right.
Blame that on me when I was in here the other day.
Yeah.
Felt like 95 degrees in here.
When I start to sweat.
Yeah. We'll get you one of those fans. Thank you.
All right, so the roads department is we handle that. It doesn't live in the general fund from a budgeting perspective. We have a Fund 21, which is called Class B Roads. Do you want to talk a little bit generally for the board and the public about how your department is funded? And we can kind of go through the individual revenue lines, or what's the easiest way to illustrate that, Bill?
I'll give just a little short rundown. You know, we generally, our major funding is from Class B roads, which is from the fuel taxes, we'll put it that way. And gets passed down to it goes to the feds for federal, and then they take their cut. largest, I'm sure. Then down to the states, and then from there to the counties and cities as well.
Great.
And I can go into how that formula works if you want, but it's pretty boring. But it's road miles and population, we'll just put it that way.
I think that is a good place to start because there is new legislation in place, Senate Bill 175 that was passed this year that established what's called the Rural Transportation Infrastructure Fund.
Correct.
And there was 40 million to be distributed to rural counties in fiscal year 24, which is the current fiscal year that we're in.
Yeah.
And so Grant County, we were expecting an allocation of a one-time allocation of 1.75 million, as well as an additional approximate 250,000 per year. I don't show in our PTIF accounts that we've received that one-time allocation yet.
Right.
And so I think we'll want to sort of reach out to some folks to see if that's something that we're going to expect this year or next, or potentially even budget in for next year.
Right.
I went ahead and I started putting in some placeholders for the B road allocation from the state. I just carried over that 3 million. This 1 million that's showing for actuals. I know that we've received one more allocation that hasn't been reconciled in the accounting software yet. So that's just, we get that, how many, we get that six allocations a year?
6 allocations.
Every other
yeah.
month?
And, and we're not on the same fiscal year, right? So technically we're behind.
Right, right.
But it all basically is averaging about, it's been 3 million a year.
Yeah,
Right around that.
yeah, I mean, I guess sometimes they say you think it's linked to gas sales, things of that nature, looking at actuals, we've been at 2.2, 2.7, 2.6, went up to 2.9 in 21, and all the way up to over 3. And so would you say 3 is a comfortable number to carry over at this point? And we might do some more.
That's kind of generally what I
Okay.
put it at, yeah.
And we'll let you know if we sort of try to make a more sophisticated projection based on numbers that we
Yeah.
receive. But
And then, of course, we had also we get some of the transportation sales tax.
right, and that's what we call the optional sales tax.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. And I just carried over a placeholder more than anything for the time being for that amount. So I just added in exactly what we budgeted for
Right.
23. Let me just show here what we had for actuals. It looks like more recently we have been up a little bit, up over 1 million. And it's kind of stayed steady there for a couple years at least.
Yeah.
And so there is an aspect of that optional sales tax that is, the law states that it can't be used to replace general fund expenditures. So that means that expenditures that your department makes that aren't specifically for maintenance of roads are to come from the general fund, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So mechanics wages, fleet maintenance.
Yeah, the work that we do on the department fleets outside of the road department, gets some of those fundings from the 200,000. There's also been plugged in there 70,000 to reimburse for administrative services, the clerk's office, basically, what it comes down to. So the general fund does get some of that back.
Okay. And then there's this expense reimbursement line from other, we've got 5,000 in there. That's just from other county departments that the roads department does work for here and there. Is that correct?
Yeah, just kind of a placeholder for anything special that comes up,
All right. Now, are there some departments that you end up sort of helping out more than others? Just out of curiosity.
Not particularly. You're right.
Sean's back there, repeat raising his hand.
What I tried to do, and as an example, is to trade off some things, like Osted, they have a bucket truck, right? And therefore we'll use their bucket truck for whatever the use we may need. In return, we have a yard backhoe that we loan to them for when they need a backhoe, or one of our older graders if they need it, you know. We just kind of a trade situation there.
We have it too.
Yeah, you know, so it just kind of works that way. We did, had to do some retrofitting on one of the airport's, 1-ton pickups for a snow plow. And we did bill for that, and I can't remember exactly. I think it might be on there. I can't see that far. At 1,000 something. I think that's it.
Oh, yeah, that 1271, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's attributed to that.
great.
Yeah.
All right, so the one thing actually I wanted to bring up, because I noticed that in this year's actuals, we have 100K here from the Transportation Special Service District.
That was their contribution to the NRCS EWP project.
Great. 'Cause we hadn't initially budgeted for that, and it looks like it wasn't handled in the amendment, so I'll make a note of that.
So
But
that flood mitigation with Back Creek.
Yeah, that was, you know, for the work around those county structures at the crossings.
is there gonna be a time before the end of this year where we're gonna know what sort, if they're gonna make a contribution of some sort to a planned project in 2024? Or do we usually just like leave that and amend it as needed, or?
Well, they're already supporting financially the Jackson Phase 2, which is rolling kind of slow, but it's moving forwards.
Okay, I think that probably lives in Fund 18 somewhere, maybe.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, right, because that, in looking back at the record for this line, it does looks like this, this has been lower or zero recently, with
Yes.
the exception of this, because the Transportation Special Service District has been contributing to stormwater projects rather than roads projects
Correct.
of late. Okay,
Yeah, so that 100,000 could probably go into the Fund 18. you know.
interesting, yeah,
But we have some reimbursement funds that need to be reimbursed that I'm looking at right now, so
okay,
we'll see how that flows. I'll talk to you about that
great.
later.
We'll continue on down here and through your revenue categories. We have charges for service. So this is 25,000. We're up over our budgeted amount this year by quite a bit,
And that's a revenue.
and that's a revenue. Oh, there will be, so, yeah.
So that's a good thing. So those are the encroachment permits, you know, and that we, I guess we sell and for encroaching on county right of ways.
Was there a
And also
particular,
inspections, we do inspections and things like that, but also it's for snow removal for San Juan County, which this 22-23 year was considerable. And also Casa Valley, which, you know, it's not much. I don't think it's ever been over $800 for Casa Valley. You know, I think this year was 22-23 was 600 something, I believe.
great. Here we have a $20,000 budgeted in revenue for 24 for the sale of surplus vehicles.
That's right. And working with the fleet manager, Cody, on, you know, some of the items in our yard that we want to surplus. And we're estimating 20,000. Could be more, could be less.
Great.
Gabe?
Yeah.
Was interest in there?
I didn't add, I didn't put that in. It was budgeted this year. We haven't gone ahead and made the transfer.
Right. But my estimate for B roads for 24 is 216,000.
216,000.
Yeah. They have a lot of money and interest rates have gone up a lot.
Well, that's significant.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that information. And then we'll work on getting getting those transfers completed.
Do we have an updated on the optional sales tax? Or did we look at that already? We mentioned it. I don't know that we
As far as like,
What we have in there this year so far?
this is a couple months behind this
Okay.
411, so I
Okay.
don't know how, yeah, I didn't come prepared with that quite yet.
Okay.
And so this contributions line is what is pulled from this fund's fund balance or sort of bank account savings in order to balance this fund and bring it to zero to balance the revenues and expenses overall. And so if we were to go off of the current we'll get into the or maybe we'll look at the bigger picture after we go over the expenses, and I can revisit what that contribution from the fund balance would look like. Any questions so far about revenues for B roads? Okay, we'll jump right into expenditures. This is a fairly big department, as you all can see. Let's see, we're gonna focus on just mostly the lines that represent details of interest or significant changes from the previous year. Are you proposing any changes in personnel out of the roads department?
Yeah.
If you click in there, Gabe, it should let you view over on the actual number. Cool.
So we have some retirements coming up. One actually is October 1st, which plays a little bit of a role in this, but not too much. But at the end of the year, we'll have 2 retirements, assistant supervisor and a long-term employee. And I'm thinking that we're gonna reorganize a little bit and add 2 positions called road foremans. And I'm not completed with the job description yet, but essentially their essential duties will be to quality control. We're gonna be spending quite a bit of time out in the field, making sure our projects and our roads are up to par, being more proactive instead of reactive, building our level of service really is what it comes down to. Why 2, you may ask, is, well, we got a large county, right? What are we at? 3,672 square miles. We're at 1,500 miles of roads. With 12 employees in the road, so if you do the math, that's about 175 miles, 100, something like that, miles per employee, somewhere like that. Right now, that's a lot of miles per employee to maintain. And most people think you think of roads, you just think of the road, but there's culverts, signage, bridges, all the infrastructure that goes along with it. So there's a lot there. So that's my thinking. I think that in the long run, that's gonna help the level of service for our roads.
So correct me if we're not on the same page, but this would not be necessarily adding 2 new positions to the road's current organizational structure. It'd be essentially reclassifying 2 positions to an increased grade to cover those.
Right. Well, I think that's what I'm thinking right now for
Sure.
2024. We'll see how that works out.
Sure.
Because they will be doing work as well.
Yeah.
But they will also be spending some time, like I said, inspections, quality
Doing those sorts of
control.
things.
To be honest with you, doing a lot of things that is time consuming.
Yeah.
And filing some reports to me and things like that. And then we have our assistant road supervisor who's retiring at the end of the year as well. And I plan on moving Cody into that position. And so there's a lot of pieces of work here. And then for his position, there'll be someone moved into the shop foreman fleet manager. And with Cody in the assistant position, he'll be able to, work with them, that position, and bring them up to speed, and work with me to get up to speed on this one, because I fully intend him to take over the supervisor position. And so that's kind of what we're looking at right now, what I've been looking at for some time. And then when I retire, Cody can decide if he wants an assistant road supervisor or add more to the road crew. We'll just kind of look at that in 2024 and see how that pans out. They're probably, if you go back to the needs assessment that we did some years ago, it indicated that the road department should have one more new employee in 2024, so 13 total road employees. And so I'm gonna try to hold that. So yeah, there may be one more new position. Okay. We'll see how that works out, but anything more on that?
I think that's good. Thanks so much. Yeah, and for, just for the record, any net impacts to the budget request that will be associated with these changes in position will be presented before the county commission in a consolidated fashion, along with any other reclassifications or new positions that might be being proposed across the county. But thanks for that background.
If I understood the revenue section correctly, the road, except for the 200,000 contribution for the general fund, all the money we get for the road department is earmarked for road work. Right? So,
Correct.
so if, Bill hires, 5 more employees, yeah, I mean, it's generously funded and we can't spend it other places, so it doesn't affect the rest of the budget. So
Does not affect the general fund, no.
So this is, and it's kind of in the same boat as our tourism promotion.
Yep.
We don't scrutinize it as closely as we do other positions.
Right, and oftentimes the difference between this fund pulling from its fund balance to cover a year or not boils down to this road equipment line that we'll look at, where there may be some years where we'll just jumping ahead here. There may be, typically there's some road equipment expenditures, but they can vary from say 127 or actually 0 in 2018 to 760 this year. And oftentimes that expense line alone determines, how Bill manages his budget.
Right, and that actually, that 760 would be more if we had actually got our street sweeper that we ordered, which is, so some of that's rolling over to 2024. It's not gonna be here till second quarter 2024, so.
Okay,
So our total budget on equipment this year was 970,000. Some of that's gonna roll over.
but yeah, thanks for adding that clarification. It's easy to lose sight of those very important details as far as how these
Yeah.
departments are funded and their impacts overall. Looking at, just kind of going down the list here, lease payments are proposed to go up from 100,000 approved this year to 150,000, and we really haven't caught up to our dreams and aspirations even this year. And that's some vehicles that you're hoping to add through the enterprise lease program.
Okay, that'll be down on the bottom there. That's 33,000 for one. I think I just plugged that in. I don't know if it came in or not, saved right or not. But the lease vehicles through enterprise, we'll be looking at one pickup service truck, as well as 2 admin pickups. I've always plugged in for the last 2 years, at least 3 years, I think, 3 admin pickups that just never materialized because of, can't get them here, I guess. But, so I've changed that up a little bit, one more service truck, like we're having a retirement happening, so I don't need that 3rd admin pickup, right? So, putting that into the road crew,
Okay,
likely the road foreman pickup.
so these are the enterprise lease vehicles,
Yes.
but
Those are equipment.
okay,
So those will be 4 graders, 2 of which will replacing 2 existing lease graders, and then I'm adding 2. $33,000 a piece per year for 3 years. So,
and
and
correct me if I'm wrong, in the past, I know that equipment like that, you're able to sort of use it for a period of time and sell it back almost for, at a really good, it's kind of almost similar to the enterprise setup.
Pretty similar.
It keeps its value really
Yeah,
well. and-
in this case, it's more of a lease. It's not an option to buy back or anything like that. So, you know, at the end of the lease, they'll just go back.
Okay, so it's a little different. Okay, got it. Guess that makes sense, because that seems like a little bit of money for that much, for that many graders or whatnot.
Exactly. It's a really good deal. It's hard to pass that up.
Let's see here, we've got,
Who pushes that, Caterpillar or
Uh,
other brands?
If I want to be honest with you, I think I pushed them into it over the years. Cause we've been leasing John Deere's and so, well, I'm just not gonna pay you that much for your leases. So,
professional and technical, that line has gone down to 10,000 from an approved 45 this year. Is there any particular reason that that's lower than is typical? Looks like that's usually used for consultants.
right, and that's because we now have an in-house engineer. So I expect to lean on Dan.
Great, that's
Really
good to
what
see
it comes
that.
down to.
That investment paying off. Great. We made reference to, so the general fund contributing some to this fund, and then this is the place where this fund gives back to the general fund in this administrative services line via human resources and billing and other services and that a variety of departments provide. And so that's kind of shown the left a little in and out. Yep.
So do we have a line where the road department pays a share of Dan's salary? Similar to admin?
That could be.
No, no, we don't.
Probably we should.
He's basically, does, right now, mainly the DRT reviews for subdivisions and whatnot. So I think that was where that cost savings is gonna come from, is not having to go out with consultants from the planning department. And that's where he's under that department.
Okay, but in past years, you know, the money that was being spent,
Yeah.
professional, technical, that was DRT stuff or that was engineering heavy?
No, that was sometimes, applications, doing applications for projects and things like that. Technical parts of it.
Okay. But I think in general, in the budget, if we've got departments that are, you know, under a separate fund, and like, they're like using the clerk's office, and we have a line item that
Yeah.
pays part of the clerk office's expense, you know, from the travel council or from the roads department. So I'm just wondering what the-
Makes perfectly good sense,
Okay.
but I don't like it.
I think a topic
Satisfied with the sake that makes perfectly good sense.
I think a topic where that could be addressed is, I know that the previous finance officer had mentioned a couple times recalculating this administrative service line. And because I can see now that's been flat. And of course, you know, the cost of doing these sorts of things does steadily go up. So I think that would be something that I would place on my docket, potentially reach out to the auditors and see how the best way to calculate that within our bounds. And potentially it could be factored in there for Fund 21.
Okay, so you're gonna make a note that when you think about administrative services, that's gonna include the engineering.
Yes.
Okay, so also let me throw this out there.
Sure.
While we're just talking about it, going back and forth. So in my best world, I guess, and I've been talking to Dan a little bit about this and Mallory as well, that the storm drainage piece of the county infrastructures well, let's just go off the master plan, storm drainage master plan, and all those projects that need to be completed, funded and completed. You know, Dan has a deep background of hydrology and whatnot like that, and to me, it makes just perfectly good sense that he is over that, you know. And he seems to be fine with that right now, anyway. So I don't want to speak for him. So I guess where I'm getting to is funding for that, for the work that he may do on those projects, in my mind, should come from this storm drain mitigation fund. Following the same logic you would just, you know,
Yeah, no, I see how that makes sense, and right, a lot of the funding sources, like the VERO fund can't be spent on storm
yeah,
mitigation.
Yeah.
But in past years, there was some amount that was being spent on engineering consulting. And I'm just saying that, wherever that money was coming from, it makes sense to send some amount of it, to
yeah,
subsidize Dan.
yeah. Anything up to do with roadways, bridges, those kind of things, come out of my budget. Anything for storm drain, consulting, engineering fee, come out of the storm drain mitigation budget.
And so that tells me that anything that we would include in administrative services that would subsidize Dan would have to be very carefully accounted for and calculated so that we knew that, that reflected accurately what Dan was working on in relation to roads.
Yeah, and so what's interesting about that, being how he's under the planning and zoning, and they do the DRT, or not the DRT, but they do the DRT, but the development reviews. And essentially now he's working into doing inspections, like out at the Moab, the new motel out there, Moab, the Country Inn off 191, he's been out there, I don't know how many times, but I know he has. I've been with him on a few road improvement from the developments inspections, but they're tied in my mind, they're really tied in with the planning and zoning. Following up with those developments. Maybe you all don't think so, but that's the way I look at it. So I think that's just part of his job of being the Ensign County engineer under the planning and zoning. I suspect it's in his job description, but I never looked.
But I agree, we have to look at how he's spending his time, and not everything the road department does is a B-road thing
Yeah.
that's suitable for funding from the sources. Some of it is.
And, Dan's worked in the private industries and as well as public, but so he knows about how to bill hours. Right? So. That's kind of my spiel on Dan. He's doing a good job too.
Great, thanks for that conversation, that discussion. We got special highway projects here, 24 requested 420 that you have planned. That's a pretty big number compared to the recent past at least. And what's the big project you got there?
Well, I think the biggest one is probably the Hastings Road repair. That's got some problems for a year or two now with the road that buckled and heaved in a certain area. Last year, this winter, 22, 23, we went in and put some drainage in there, some extra drainage. Boy, my mind just went, what do you call it, Bill? Perforated pipe drainage. Oh,
Tile?
French drain, thank you. There you go, somebody beat us to
Yeah.
it.
That one.
So about 1,700 feet of it, to catch some of that water and keep it out from under the roadway. Seems to be working right now, so my next repair part of that is to repair the roadway itself, so. And then it needs, the whole 8 miles of Hastings needs chipped. We chipped 4 miles of it down to the Swayze Rapids 3 years ago, I think it was. So we got to finish that up. That's probably the biggest one. And then some projects here in town.
Nice. Right.
Oh, and part of that Hastings, I'll have to contract out for the pavement, but I think we can do all the sub work. Material work, roadway work, but we'll have to hire someone to pave it.
We usually budget in a little bit for potential easement acquisitions. And then down to this road equipment line, you have a little list of things that you're hoping to acquire for your department as far as equipment goes.
Correct.
It's like the street sweeper that you're still crossing your fingers for.
Yeah, that's the CO is the carryover,
And then
350,000.
and a loader that would be outright purchase.
Yeah.
Snow removal wings. It's that's kind of a, is that like basically a snow plow or just a?
Yeah, well, there's a front implement, V plow, and then they make a attachment to the grader that, has an extra wing on it that sticks out so you can get that snow pushed out further. So we ran into a big issue up there this year. We always battled with it, but this winter was a tough one. So, we're gonna make our lives easier, basically, and it'll go a long way. It'll beef up the productivity up there, I think, and get us in and out faster and get people using the skiing up there faster. What?
This is up guys are on.
Well, I'll use it everywhere. The
Yeah.
guys are north end, Loop Road, if I need to. Yeah.
Are there any other lines that you wanted to speak on out of this before I ask for any questions on these items? All the rest of them are pretty well either lower or the same as has been your baseline.
Yeah, just one thing I will just throw in there, so, since we're all right here anyway. So we've got two older type trucks. They're still pretty good shape. One in particular, we put some money in recently, the transmission a couple of years ago. Those things, it's one of our go-to trucks, if you will, for snow plowing. Everybody seems to really think it's the best up on the loop road. Well, the motor went out in it. So right now we're looking at cost of a reman motor on it. We're looking in the neighborhood of 45 to 50,000. So depending on how this year's budget goes, I haven't decided to buy it yet, but if I do, I may be getting into the capital fund. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then our number 32 truck, which is also a pretty good truck, we're looking at a pull-out motor for it. That's a truck that's probably been wrecked or something, and they just pulled the motor out of it. And we're checking on what the mileage might be on it. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 15,000 for it. Get that 32 dump truck back up too. So this is all kind of short term, because I do have in 2024 to buy a new dump truck. But just trying to give you an idea on this budget, we could lose a motor in a grader truck, that's a $50,000, $60,000 bill right now, type of deal. So it's nice to kind of have some, I don't want to call it patty, but it's nice to have that capital projects fund sitting there that I can dip into if I have to.
And specifically, the road capital projects fund is the one that specifically you're talking about. Fund
Correct.
35.
Correct, that Fund 35, yeah.
And how much is in Fund 35 right now?
2.7, 2.5.
2.5, yeah, well, there was one last item I wanted to look at here in Fund 21, and then we can jump to that real quick. Because there is this contributions expense line where we see the Fund 21 roads contribution to Grand County Active Trails and Transportation. And so that's a portion of that optional sales tax, which is qualified for use in active transportation context as well as roads, right?
Correct.
And this number, this 407,503, I carried over the convention that that had been done in the past, and I'm open to discussion on how this is handled, but there's something of a fund balance or a savings being built up for paved path maintenance in Fund 47, which is the trails, that's the Trails Department fund, I believe. And then there's 307,503 that is more of a, that's more just for operations for GCAT or Grand County Active Trails and Transportation. And I know that there was some back and forth about whether it was appropriate to keep putting that 100,000 away and,
For trails maintenance?
for the paid path.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah.
More the better, because
So what does that do to be paid again,
I'm thinking, I just off the top of my head now, because we did, I think we did 6 miles of it. We did from 313 down to the river. So we still, probably in a couple of years, we need to finish that out, down to the rest of the trail, the paved path down to White Goose Island there. I'm trying to think though, what's really good about having that kind of money in there is you never know when one of them elevated structures are gonna have a problem, especially when we've had high water like we have. And so technically you should be, and this is something y'all would probably need to talk to Dan about. I brought it up a little bit, but not thoroughly. Is we really probably ought to go inspect those pillars and vent caps with that water as high as it was this year. Take a look, see. In the past, we've hired our consultant, which came out of this fund. It was right around, if I remember right, $7,000, 7 to 8, something like that. So it'd be more now, I'm sure, to have our consultant do it.
And I take
And
this.
I'm not trying to throw everything on to Dan, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, he's the county engineer, so, and has the technical ability to do it, I believe. It's something we've got to talk to him about.
And to your point about sort of making sure that there's ample resources in there and hopefully sooner than later, the Spanish Valley Drive multi-use path,
Yeah,
gets built.
exactly.
And that's only going to necessitate that type of, those resources even more.
So, yeah, I'd be dropping some in there every year. Yeah. And
Okay.
while we're talking about that, I would also be dropping some in the storm drain mitigation fund every year. I think Chris Baird can't remember when he really started it, but I think, the last 3 or 4 years anyway, he's been trying to get 400,000 in there a year, something like that. And I would encourage that and then some, good.
And that's coming from general fund money, not from the actual sales tax, right?
Correct.
There's also that other money that came in, the LACTA funds that Chris Baird was gonna put towards the storm drain
Yes, that's
mitigation
right. Glad you
also.
brought that up. I forgot about that.
There were 2 separate checks, I think 22 and 23. I don't know that we've received the second one. He did confirm that we had received the first one
We got the
before
second one.
he parted. So that money was gonna go towards some of that storm drain mitigation and matching funds for the addition of storm drain work there on the bike path close to your place in Arroyo Crossing.
Yeah.
At least that was.
That's what Chris had proposed. I don't think we discussed.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, part of the budget.
And I would just say that, if you don't mind, want to overstep my boundaries, but I would definitely consider putting a large portion of that into storm drain. And I would also consider the fact that building some of this storm drain infrastructure, the county road department could do, but they would just have to be reimbursed. And we could do it less expensive than anybody else. So, but a plan has to be put together, and what I mean plans by a plan set and all the right permitting, and it's awesome to have a county engineer.
Well, I think just, at a meeting earlier, or agenda review earlier today, jump in, but it seems like administration staff is assembling a bit the list of all the big ticket things you might want to do, like the law enforcement building.
Yeah.
And certainly storm drain stuff, get on that list.
Okay.
Jackson Street Phase 2, right at the top.
Pardon me?
Jackson Street Phase 2, right at the top.
Well, it's already funded.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's another thing. There is some, there is some funding from the storm drain mitigation fund allocated to Jackson. So we don't overlook that, but
So Gabe, on that, there was the, I don't know if it's on the screen anymore, but some proportion of the county option sales tax was going to GCAP.
Yeah.
How is that split determined? Is it written into the law that a certain percentage, or did we just decide traditionally, or? You know?
I don't know. And looking at the, you know, the historicals on it, it looks like it's sort of waxed and waned. And I'm not sure, you know, to what degree this has always been, there's always been a small bit towards pay path maintenance, or if it's all just gone towards trails. There was a big spike in it here that I'm not sure I can quite explain.
Okay.
has Maddie been into the budget?
Not yet.
Okay.
Probably
Well,
explain
that
that.
might determine how much goes in there.
Yeah.
And then I guess related to that, and, you know, this is not strictly speaking of budgeting thing, but there's, I think, like 4 or 5 different 1/4% sales taxes that are available to counties. And we collect one of them, I think it's county option tax. And, but I think some counties collect more than one. And so I don't think you're restricted just to take one. And I find it a bit confusing because they all seem to be about some combination of roads and public transportation. You know, some are maybe all one, some the other, some are mixed. And I just think someone in the county should do the research to figure out, you know, whether we might want to get an extra 1/4% for some of these projects, and that will, yeah, definitely, if we feel like we're not spending enough on roads, that would be something to consider. Yeah, I think roads are already pretty generously funded, but maybe our needs are even greater. But also, like, the cities wanting to grab some sales tax money from Grant County to use for their pilot transportation project.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up.
You know, but so instead of taking a hit, you know, why don't we just get the city to help us maybe add an extra 1/4%, you know, sales tax. See, we'd also want to double check that sales taxes are more efficient than property taxes for putting the burden on visitors instead of residents. But it is something to consider.
Yeah, well, we'll have that reflected in the minutes in the record, and it's something that I'm interested in seeing what options might be available and what processes might need to be undertaken.
But then back to I think just figuring out why we split the existing tax the way we do, and whether there are any limits in code about how much we can spend on, yeah, I'd be interested.
Yeah, and looking back at least at 2022's budget advisory board discussion, you know, watching the tape on that, it struck me as that it was relatively artificial, but that, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really sure. So we were gonna have a quick look at the road capital projects fund. Is there anything else about Fund 21 that we wanted to touch on?
Not for me, if there's any questions or anything. There you go.
Let's see, we've got Fund 35, so it's basically
121,000 for interest for the capital account.
Look at that. Did you say 125?
121.
121. Thank you for that.
Yep.
So this essentially has 2 different sides. One is the draw from the fund balance to show the revenue side of $2.5 million. That would cover the potential expense of $2.5 million that would be available in a given year for projects. And you suggested previously that the equipment could also be pulled out of this fund.
Yes. Actually, we did one when we had to replace a we found a good deal on a truck. It's right next door, actually. The same
Oh, yeah.
year as the one that went down, and I think it was $29,000, and it's been rocking and rolling ever since. So,
And so that's that 81,600?
No.
Okay. Well,
no, I think the truck was 29, and then I think there was 2 draws out of there and I'm not sure how that happened. But there was 2 draws out of there for the riprap rock for the EWP project,
Okay,
which is fine. We're gonna get reimbursed for that. Yeah, the S&S garage,
okay,
that's their pit. So it wasn't the garage, it was their pit that we were getting the rock out
okay,
of.
yeah.
So, that's over in Green River. It's the only pit that would meet the specifications for NRCS.
Right kind of rock.
Yeah. So when we get reimbursed, I'm working with Jenny Beth right now, we can just put it back in that fund, or, that'd probably be the cleanest way to do it. Just put it back in there.
But the proposal here for 2024 is to budget in that same 2.5 million for potential road projects. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
It's kind of a placeholder.
Right.
And so just to make sure I'm understanding, that 2.5 million, that's not a contribution from last year, that's just the how much is
Yes.
accumulated over multiple years?
Yeah.
And so the funds that went into that, are they all funds that are restricted for roads? Or-
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there was no general fund money or other?
Correct. Yeah. And what that is over the years, I'm planning on some pretty large projects that federal type money, that would need match money upwards of $1 million plus. And so, it hasn't happened yet, but it could anytime soon, maybe. But that's what it is. It's just for match money, or just, projects that come up you gotta do. And you're not financially, it's not in the actual budget, but it's there for the use if you need it. And I think I've been pretty conscious of the fact that we need to save some money. It's not unheard of to have, I'll just call it a good fund balance, because the price of things are so up and down and around, oil, gas, just whatever. So it's pretty nice to have that in there.
All right. Well,
But if the flat grant ever actually happens, which is very highly rated on there a few years ago, for Cane Creek, yeah, that'll be $1 million match, easy, maybe more now, so.
that's the Federal Lands Access Program, flat grant. Yeah. And there was the raise grant for the work up at Sand Flats, but any match funding for that program would come out of the Sand Flats budget, as we saw.
Some of it would be, and I would allocate about 250 for it. And it's reimbursable though. That's all reimbursable. It's just kind of like Andrea, I think she presented that. She would put in 250 and I would, and that's just kind of to show that the county has skin in the game. But
Right.
at the end of the game, it gets reimbursed because it's 100% grant. If that makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, that's all I was planning on touching on with roads and bridges. Were there any questions from the board?
It's expensive.
It's
Necessary.
And it's funded by sales tax.
funded by state taxes rather than county tax.
Just don't even like, because you're driving, you're not putting those numbers to the thing.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the budget, the majority of that goes to salary and benefits. Well, not the majority, but at least close to half.
You said you have 13 staff, 11, what was it, 11?
Well, there's 18 counting myself.
18, oh goodness.
Or
19 counting you.
19 counting myself. But, we got the shop and then, the assistant and then the administrative assistant and but 12 on the road crew, which is, pretty slim.
Well, thanks for all you do, and don't retire too fast.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, I was gonna put my usual plug that, it seems whenever we have flooding or snow or things like that, it seems like the road department is on things very quickly, so. Just getting value. So.
Well, I appreciate that. I tell you, when I took this position 16, 17 years ago, we had a really good crew, and we still do, and we're still trying to keep that going. And guys that really like what they do and take pride in their work, so I really like that. I will say this, and I think they're running into this, even a lot of the private contractors, that it's hard to find workers. So we try to keep them as long as we can, because it's pretty hard to replace good workers, so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks.
Mr. Jackson. All right, next up on the agenda, we have we're gonna jog back to item B2B, Canyonlands Regional Airport. And here present virtually, we do have Tammy Howland. Hi, Tammy, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
We can hear you just loud and clear. Thanks for being here. Sorry, that was, definitely something on my end that prevented you from joining us earlier. And I do apologize for that. Thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad Bill was able to step up and get his done so that you guys didn't have to stay any longer. So everything works out.
It worked out for sure. All right, so I'm going to, let's start with the expenses for the airport in the general fund. That's 104562. We'll open that up here. And then we'll just touch on, do you have actually the first question is, we don't have to go into too much detail, but do you plan on proposing any new positions or reclassifications for 2024?
Not that I currently have planned.
Okay. And I'm just going to run down, and we're going to focus on some of the expense lines that represent any significant changes from the approved budget of this year. And if you want to stop me to provide any extra detail about any given line, you would be welcome to. But it looks like in this realm of subscriptions and notices, and as well as travel, office supplies, and things of that nature, it looks like they represent pretty well, inline baseline costs that don't look like anything out of line from how we've funded the airport in the past.
Correct.
One little change, water and sewer system, the request is reduced. And there is a note about someone now that we have working in the county who's currently taking minutes, who is a certified water system operator. And you in the past have hired someone to come in and do the necessary testing. Do you want to talk about this potential change and cost savings for the county?
Sure. So any public water system has to have a certified water operator. We currently don't have anybody on staff that does that. So we've been contracting with Brian Bell, who works for the city of Moab and Thompson Springs Water District. And we've been paying $500 a month for that service. Not to downplay his importance, but there's not a whole lot that he has to do physically. We just have to have somebody on record with that certification. So, ultimately we do all the sampling and treatments, and we do all the work on site with our staff. So I think having Dana be the water operator, I think would be just fine. Ryan's, he's been a good help when I've needed him, but I think this is a great cost saving measure for the county and for the airport as a whole. So I think this would be a good change if we can make it work.
Thanks. Yeah, and I appreciate you providing that context, because it's not as though it doesn't sound like it's going to strain the capacity of my chief deputy and have her running out to the airport all the time. It's more It's more of a,
Yeah,
it's more
Yeah,
of
like I-
it's more of
yeah, like I,
recipients documents.
exactly, yeah, and and if she wants to go over like some of our plans and stuff we have, just so she's aware of them, as that person that's putting her name to things, I think that's very, minimal time.
Okay, and then
Yes.
electrical repairs and weed control, we're zeroing those out from those are lines that in the past had been budgeted for. Can you just confirm that I didn't make a mistake?
Yes. Yeah, they're things that I can cut out. And with a couple increases in some other areas, the electrical repair, it's been on there forever and we just kind of used it, but it doesn't really have a true purpose, so we can cut that out. To concede to some higher amounts in some other places, so.
Okay, so what these sub $1,000 items that we've coded to electrical repairs will sort of get subsumed elsewhere in your budget? In other
Yeah,
words?
pretty much, yep.
Okay. Okay, it's a relatively small amount, and if that seems appropriate and easily tracked on your end, I think that's acceptable.
Mhm.
And I know you had mentioned the fence project when you were presenting that before the commission. There was some talk about, am I getting that right, that would lead to some easier maintenance? Was there something you said about weed maintenance associated with the fence that would be made easier? Am I getting that wrong? Am I getting, other
No,
than you
not necessarily with the,
but
not with the fence.
okay, sorry, I don't know where I'm coming from. Runway taxi wrap maintenance, there was 36,000 budgeted this year. It doesn't look like we're quite there yet. I don't know if we're still planning on getting up to that level, but we've come back down to 16 for the 24 request. Do you want to provide some context?
Yeah, it was a higher amount this year because we still had some grant money, and we're gonna be purchasing some signs and reflective markers for our gravel runway. So that's why that line item was so high. But yeah, this 2024 should be back down to a normal
Okay.
year.
Thanks. And then just for the record, there are a few lines in this budget, in this department budget, namely electricity, propane, and telephone, which is where internet cost is coded, that this year there was those were left zero in the budget. And so I've made a note to make sure to account for that in the amendment, in the end of year amendment. I'm not sure why those were left at zero. Usually we at least put an estimate of some sort in those lines. It could have been a simple oversight, but we have included in the 24 request what would be the appropriate amount for those given lines. Let's see. Lease expense, the approved budget was 14,000 in 23. Looks like that's going up to 18,000. Is that an extra vehicle or just increased costs associated with the vehicles that you have?
So I think the original amount that was budgeted, the 14,000, that was just kind of, I think, a guesstimate. Maybe, but we brought on a new vehicle in, gosh, did we get that this year? I think it was part of 22, but a new truck. And so that is because that's a little bit higher payment, that's what brought that up. But I don't know where the 14,000 originally came from. I think it was just kind of a guesstimation.
Okay, that's fair. One thing I just want to make sure that the 18,000 that we're plugging in, the fleet manager did give us that exact number. And the reason I'm asking is we're almost at 23 for this year. So I want to make sure we're budgeting enough in that line. Do you know why? Do you know why it might be high or?
I'm not sure. We ought to look into that.
Yeah, sorry, I probably didn't catch that when we met before. So we might want to circle back with Cody on that number, just to make sure
Yeah.
18 solid
Yeah.
for us.
Make sure something didn't get added in from a different department or something.
So there's airport vehicle maintenance, that you're requesting $10,000 for 2024, which represents an increase from this year's approved budget, but it looks like it's what we have spent in the past. And you had mentioned that there's some maintenance associated with the fire truck, out at the airport.
Yeah, both our fire trucks, we've had to do a lot of maintenance on, and the big fire truck, the one that really matters is a lot of the parts that go bad on them are, they're $400, $500 a pop, so it's easy to rack that up. And this year, I don't even know if those numbers are quite up to date yet, but we just put new batteries on that. It's 6 batteries with $1,200 just for batteries. So,
Yeah.
and pretty quick.
Right, and then before going to your inventory requests, I just wanted to touch on schooling real quick. You did a good job of identifying exactly the trainings and conferences and certifications that you and your staff need. But I did want to just show for the record that there is a higher amount budgeted for this year, and I believe that's associated with the airport having hosted a particular training event this year. Is that correct?
Correct. That's
That was an associated revenue that offset that higher
Correct.
expense for this year.
correct. Yes.
I believe it was 30,000.
Yeah, and as soon as I get my bill from AmeriGas, we'll be able to invoice that out and recoup that cost. There will be, the cost of our staff will come out of that schooling budget as well. And that will be the remainder of what was originally budgeted for that line item to begin with, so.
Great. All right, and then so there's a 24,600 here that shows in your inventory line as a request for 2024. And I have here pulled up the document that you produced for me separately. And sorry, I didn't provide that in advance to the board. This just got prepared for me. But this is a little more detailed breakout of those inventory requests totaling 24,600. There's a water pump, software, snow blower, and tablets to be used with that software. Do you want to give any background regarding how critical these inventory needs are?
Sure. The water pump definitely is number one on the list. The water pumps we use now are basically irrigation pumps. And we've had nonstop issues with them. I've been working with Desert H2O, and Danny Pritchett has proposed a commercial grade water pump that will surpass the capabilities we have right now with our pumps and be more reliable and more modernized, so that we can actually keep an eye on what's happening with the pumps rather than waiting for somebody to call me and say, hey, we don't have any water. We should be able to digitally monitor the pump at some point. I don't think we'll be able to at first until we can get an internet connection and things like that for it. But there is that potential in the future just to kind of modernize what we have a little bit so that we're not struggling to keep the water system going at the airport. The software,
is that specifically an FAA requirement that you're needing to comply with?
The software is not a requirement. What the software does is it takes all of the inspections, all the maintenance logs, all of our training records, everything that we have to keep track of and maintain for FAA compliance. It pulls it all together into a program. It you know, it sends out reminders, hey, this training's due, so that we're not running that risk of missing a training, and then being written up for it at inspection time, but also better tracking of work orders. Any type of issues on the airfield, that right down to just, you know, even changing out a light bulb, everything has to be shown to have a work order, that it's been resolved. So these are all things that the FAA is looking for when they come to check and make sure we're maintaining our compliance for FAA requirements. And it brings it all into one program. And with this tablet, I could pull up, see where we're at with our training, see where we're at with, you know, our work orders. Is there a work order that's not getting completed? Why is it not getting completed? And then when the FAA inspector comes, she can log in. She or he can log in and be able to have all of, and actually with these programs, they can log in ahead of time and save a lot of time for them being at our airport.
Right.
Just there's, you know, every airport that's a commercial grade airport, you know, they have systems like this. And then even Vernal, who's not even quite as busy as we are, they use this software as well. So
Tammy, that's awesome. That sounds really, thanks for that background. I really appreciate it. Would you say that, or I'm sorry, has the system and the software been vetted by our IT department? Have you run it by Matt?
I have not had him vet it yet. I've brought it up to him in an email just to let him know I was looking at it, but he hasn't vetted it yet. No.
I'll make sure to make a note. It'll reflect in the record, but we want to make sure that it gets approval by him before it gets approved in the final tentative.
Sure.
And then as far as the snow blower goes, I know I seem to remember in the past, you have a snow plow and that you might have also added on some sort of broom or sweeper attachment for the runway. And so now this is another implement or attachment that you're proposing to add?
This is a different attachment. So we got one piece of equipment. We got a front end loader, and then we got 3 different attachments to go with it. But you can only use one attachment at a time. And you have 1 hour to clear the runway. What I'm looking for is a blower that attaches to our smaller John Deere tractor. Because one of our requirements when we clear the runway is along the edges, you can't have berms. Because they freeze, and then if an airplane was to run off the runway, it could actually bust off a landing gear. And so this tractor would, after everything gets pushed to the edges, it would come along, take those berms and spread them out so that there isn't that hazard there along the runway. So I understand why you're thinking, well, you just got something. It takes multiple pieces of equipment. And like I said, we only have an hour.
Up to now, we've kind of been out of compliance, would you say, or?
Yeah, a little bit. There's some wiggle room around it. And this would make things safer.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, baby steps to best practice. That's great.
We've got a great fleet going, and this is kind of that last piece of the puzzle, really. And that price could be a little bit different. That is just kind of an estimate on what I've seen on prices. Doing a quick search, so that we could see that come in a little bit lower than that price, but.
Does the board have any questions regarding this inventory request list?
And actually, it looks like. Okay, yeah, you got that list right. I was looking at mine and it kind of got jumbled up on the page I'm looking at, so that's good. And then same with the tablets, that was kind of a guesstimation, just.
Okay, so, yeah.
Matt
for
might
that-
be able to get us a better deal, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll want, Matt, I'm assuming Matt will be the one to acquire that. We'll want to get this all lined out specifically with Matt, and that's the case when you pursue any sort of software and associated equipment. So let's just make sure to run that through IT.
Yeah.
As far as the capital projects list here, that is being presented, a total of $180,000. There's 5 projects. Are these being proposed as potential airport improvement projects with supported funding by the FAA, or where do
No.
these fit in the greater picture?
No, these would be county funded projects.
Okay,
We,
and
so I'll get to our, I'm sorry.
And so the rank column, that's sort of, that's very specifically refers to the critical, how critical the need is for that particular project. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. The awning project, is, we have that currently in our budget for 23. But I will be looking at pooling a bunch of our current capital money in an effort to try to get a generator for the terminal. So that's why you kind of see that pushed into 24 again. And that's something I need to put together for you and for the commission for approval. So that's why you see that one pushed over. The brushes for the sweeper, that's for some of that new equipment we just got. The sweeper is probably the piece we use the most. We use that all year long. Our pavements can't have any rocks or any debris on the pavement. So we get that out and use it quite a bit to help with some of that mess that comes up on the pavement. The beacon tower and maintenance, the beacon hasn't been touched. This is the big tower out by the road that you'll see flash the green and white light. There's hardly any paint on it anymore. So we need to look at getting some paint put on there. Again, I don't have any estimates for that. So it's just a general estimate on that. Vending machines, we had this approved before. I ordered vending machines. The company they were ordered from never followed through. We tried to get the money refunded. I'm working with Steven right now to recoup that money. But in the meantime, we would like to still get those machines. So I'm asking for that funding again. The security gate, this is a project that Cora Phillips, emergency manager, helped put in for a FEMA grant. So this is kind of a placeholder in case we get that grant. If we don't get that grant, this project probably won't happen in 24. So that is what that line item is. So essentially that list is really, it's 100,000. Given that we've had our operating and maintenance budgets paid for 2.5 years, every revenue that's generated at the airport by grant assurances has to go back to the airport. So that's one thing we need to look at, is tracking where those revenues have been going for the last 2.5 years. Generally, the revenues just go back into the next year's budget. And so it's been really easy. We haven't had to worry about that. But through this process of trying to figure things out, I realize I don't know, I don't know where it's being kept track of the revenue that's come in. And then what's actually gone back to the airport. So these capital projects are kind of a perfect place to throw those revenues back into while we're using grant money to pay for operations, payroll, and debt services.
Okay, thanks. It sounds like we have some continued conversation, and, you know,
Yeah.
I think it'll ultimately, you know, the commission might decide that, you know, if there were funds that need to be appropriated to the airport that weren't, that those funds might be best used for operations, you know, now and into the future, for example. But, you know, that's something that I think that the commission can discuss, but it sounds like you and I have some conversations about, you know, what amount of funds we're talking about. And if that is the case, we haven't been sort of accounting for them properly. That's not anything that came up in an audit that we've had. So I'm definitely curious about it.
Right.
Any questions right from the board right now regarding the expense side? We'll go over some revenue lines.
I've just got a quick one. The check that was going to Ryan Bell for $500 a month, was that going to him directly, to the city, where did that?
It went to him directly. He had his own LLC for those services, which I believe is how he is paid for as well by Thompson. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, he has his own LLC for those services.
I think that was set up as an independent contractor, not.
All right, and so we'll go into some of the revenue lines associated with the airport. Let's see, we'll start in this 103100 family. There we have, let's see, aviation fuel tax. Let's see, I thought I added something in there this today, but it looks like I didn't. Was for that fuel tax, was there a number that you had prepared to plug in for 2024, Tammy?
Let me find my revenue here. I thought I had it open already. I guess I don't.
I've got something open here too. I don't see the state fuel tax.
There you go. Yeah. Yep,
Yeah.
that's it right there.
All right. Sorry, everyone, for not having that prepared.
Yeah, that
That looks
so,
to be pretty in line with historical, so I don't know that we
yes.
need to go into it too much.
Yeah.
Let's see, we'll move on to intergovernmental. 70, let's see, 10, 33, 70, 001. Is that? Yeah, we got airport restaurant tax contribution. Looks like that's been zero for a while. I'm not sure if that's kind of a dead account, or if you have any comments on that you can illuminate.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, I couldn't tell you, Gabe.
Okay.
You know, this is where Chris kind of took charge, and so I'm just kind of guessing as we go here, and I put revenues in where it seemed like they fit.
No worries. No worries.
So it could look a little bit different than it has in the past.
That's fine. Yeah, this one in particular, airport fees. I've added up the suggestions that you made with regards to putting into 103413 000. So that would include garbage fees, water and sewer. We've also included rental car concession. This kind of raised my eyebrows. This 170,000 projected revenue for rental car concessions. Is that correct? Is that supposed to be? Yes. 170? Okay.
So rental cars are our biggest moneymaker at the airport.
And so that's nothing new, hey?
No.
So I'm
In fact, I
thinking that 170 probably belongs somewhere else then, and I'll just make a note of the record.
That's,
'Cause-
and that's fine if that's not quite the right account, but that's, like I said, I don't know how Chris laid those out in the past. This is actually only my second budget, with the airport. So,
You're doing great.
yeah, there's, some of the other fees, garbage, water, and sewer have not been getting charged on the leases, as they're written. So those are all kind of new charges. Some of them starting this year and hopefully by next year, everybody's on. So those are,
So we've been providing garbage, water and sewer for all our tenants.
there's been, and I'm not gonna say who, but there have been a couple that big players that have been paying those fees. And then everybody else is kind of not.
Okay, well, thanks for correcting that.
Yeah, so there's, and then, we've added I don't want to call them a rental car company, but a ride share. And their fees kind of fall in with the rental cars. So it's not a ton of money, but there's some added revenue there. So there are some increases. I see potential increases with our parking as well with the new system. We're on track for this year to be well above what we were last year. And so I foresee that increasing. So.
Okay. Looks like last year we got up to 25,000. And we had budgeted 34. So we didn't quite meet our mark, but you're suggesting that we're on our way. You still feel good about 34, even though we haven't quite, we're in the busy season so that stands to jump up quite a bit from 22 where we're at to date.
Yeah, and of course with revenues, it's sometimes hard to project, of course. And I don't know from the county standpoint, as far as auditing, if it's better to be higher on that revenue side or lower and go over it. And that's
we like it to be perfect. No, I'm joking. All right, so I'm going to move on to the 3600 family. We have airport ramp fees. This one is conspicuous. I think that this is a line that would almost, my understanding is that it would be entirely paid by Red Tail. Is that correct or not?
No, so that is it is paid by Red Tail. That is their tie down fees, and then the revenue that we make off of fuel sales, which Red Tail sells the fuel at the airport. So yes, they pay that.
And it looks like we never ended up billing them anything last year, and we haven't yet this year. And so that's a lot of money floating around. Is there anything you can speak to in terms of those receipts?
So usually, I don't see them. They bypass me and go right to your office. They send a check, I think, for one lump sum. And I think that maybe where some of that hang up is it's just not getting divided out like it should. And it's I don't blame anybody in your office because you don't know what it is they're paying. And this is something we'll have to work on coming up. I can work with Jenna Beth. Is Red Tail sends me a breakout of what they're sending you guys. And so I think that's something I'll just need to have them share with you as well when they send that check in.
Okay, so to be clear, you feel confident that those funds for ramp fees, have been paid, they just have been misallocated?
I
Or
think so. I think so. And Chris and I had talked about that previously as well.
That's great. Thank you. I'm glad we were able to clear that up. Or we can further follow up to make sure that that is the case, most importantly. There was airport shuttle fees that's kind of been relatively inactive, though we have received some in there this year. I'm not sure if that's accurate. Or if we want to budget for.
Yeah,
any
I didn't have that line item in some of these don't show up. That
Okay.
shuttle fees didn't show up in my Cassell. So those would need to, I guess, go into that account.
Okay, and then airport leases is the last big one here. And so based on these projections that this projection document that you offered, and essentially there's this line 103623 with 6 zeros. And I added those all up from this column to total 146,000.
I think that may be where a lot of that,
Okay.
some of that, it just kind of all got lumped into one account.
Yeah. And so these numbers that we have typically been bringing in up over 200, up over 250. Those are kind of inflated because those should have been more accurately distributed amongst the airport. Okay, that's a good start on figuring out what's going on there and explaining why this revenue projection is lower as compared to 2023, but it looks like we got a little work to do there. But thanks for helping me work this out on the fly, and thank you to the board for being here to witness it. Are there any questions from the board regarding the revenues on the airport? Okay, let's see. There is the Fund 56.
Yep.
That is associated with the airport improvement projects.
Yeah, can I share my screen? I don't know if did I send you the CIP list? The most up-to-date one? It doesn't look like it.
So, do I have to stop sharing to let Tammy share?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You can go ahead and do your thing.
Okay. What's disabled? Oh, it's saying that I'm disabled. Click on there and allow.
Quinn's on it. Thanks, Quinn.
Try now.
All right, let me. Can you all see that?
Yep.
All right.
You could probably click it bigger, one more touch.
All right. How's that?
Even better, thank you.
Okay.
And so you can touch on these briefly, and what's most important is, and this might be where you're going anyway, but what is likely to be, in 24. And, we don't need to go down the list much further than 24 for the purposes of this discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so 24 is this brown section right here. This is 23 up here. This relocate taxiway Alpha 1, the apron and hard stand expansion. This is the construction portion of the design work that we are currently doing right now. So this year, the design work will happen for that. And then in 24 will be construction. These are guesstimations on the high end. That's, FAA prefers we inflate those numbers because it's easier to add it back into the pool later than try to pull it somewhere if bids come in over. So
And Tammy, I just want to read into the record. So for the 2024 airport improvement projects that are likely to be approved, the local match for those two projects is $187,400 for a $2 million project, and then $562,200 of a local match for a $6 million project.
That is correct.
Thank you.
And typically in the past, when we've had big ticket items like this, they've gone to CIB for, either generally it ends up being a loan to help cover those. But hopefully we have some revenue that hasn't been spent that can go towards this. So those are the projections for the FAA entitlement projects. The column here is the federal portions. These 4 columns here. Discretionary money is money that doesn't get used and put back into the pool. And then kind of gets dispersed out to airports as they have bigger projects. So that is not guaranteed money. But I can confidently say the FAA really likes giving Moab money because we spend it and use it. And so we have a really good credit rating, so to speak, with the FAA on that. So it's not a given, but it's a pretty good likelihood that we'll get that money. Entitlements, these funds here are funds that we have on hand from our $1 million that we receive every year. You see that it's a little more than $1 million in 2024 because we didn't use them in 2023. We're using bill funding in 2023. This was bill money is the bipartisan infrastructure legislation that added an additional $1 million and some change to our already $1 million that we get in entitlement money. And so we use those on this design work because we did something a little bit out of the box, and I won't get into that right now, but so we carried over our entitlement money into 24 to fund this bigger project. What's remaining from that is this $187,400 with an additional $850,000 of remaining bill money on top of that. So Moab is no longer considered economically distressed in the eyes of the FAA. So we're at a nearly 10% match on our projects now. We used to be about 5%. So that's a huge blow for us. And so here's Grand County's matching. Again, these are not exact amounts. Exact amounts would not be known until bids are received. And then this is the estimated total costs of those projects.
Great. Thanks for that overview. Really appreciate that. Those 2 projects, I think at this point, I'm not exactly sure how it's been done in the past, but my thinking with that, it would be proposed before the commission as part of a consolidated capital improvement project list. And, with the appropriate context, given all of the funding available to help support it, in addition to the match that we would be providing. And then it would, accordingly be put into Fund 56 expense and revenue side accordingly. So if you could go ahead and unshare your screen.
Yeah, and just a heads up, Gabe, that is just a draft right now. We will, and usually in October, we have a meeting with the FAA. And I will, once I get that date, I will send you an invite so that you can sit in on it and kind of get a little bit better understanding of that process if you'd like.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah,
So, Gabe, 156, was that just the county contribution and not the full, not the like 93% or whatever it is that comes from FAA? It seemed like the numbers in Fund 56 were quite a bit smaller than the one that Tammy said.
it's the full amount. Let's see, like this 850, for example, represents the total project cost. And then we get reimbursed, we get reimbursements from the FAA, that offsets. Does that make sense? So we're in Fund 56 now, for example, the design of the apron and taxiway.
So that's just the design, that's not construction.
Correct, but that's 4 projects as well, so not just one project, that's actually 4 different projects, that's why that's a higher item number. Or ticket item.
And then just for the record, I'm including $175,000 here in that AIP. We didn't ever update that name, but it does have a real, it's not just TBD anymore, it is determined.
Yes.
But that there is going to be a carryover of approximately $175,000.
Yes.
And this year expended will be 850 less 175. And can you confirm that the fence design and construction is still slated to be completed 100% in 2023 and therefore there will be carryover?
Yeah, that project will be finished this year and build out by the end of the year.
Great. And then just on the other side, on the expense side, that 175 also shows here. And this will be adjusted to reflect the lower amount to be expended this year. Let's see. Those are the only, as I just stated before, we won't go ahead and create accounts for the new AIP projects until sort of full consideration by the commission before moving forward and budgeting for them. And I just wanted to quick scroll through these other accounts just to display for everyone. Well, I'm sure Treasurer Kaufman, I bet would have some interest to plug in here, so I'll check back with him. But that's the only relevant things to touch on in Fund 56 at this moment in regards to 2024. Any further questions from the board regarding Fund 56 or the airport in general before we move on to the next department?
Can I ask a quick question, Gabe?
Sure.
What portion of TRT funding goes to the airport? And where does that go in at?
TRCCA can partially fund the airport.
Yeah, I think it's not TRT, it's TRCC.
TRCCA.
Oh, sorry. TRCC, okay.
Well, maybe we could just answer that over email or something.
Yeah, we can, if you want, we can go over that later. I just didn't know if it needed to be discussed.
Yeah, I didn't come prepared at the moment, and I think we're ready to move on to the next department. Just looking up. So thanks for your understanding and thanks for your time and thoroughness, and appreciate everything you do out there at the airport.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your support. I couldn't do it without you.
All righty. Thank you.
I log on to our Zoom and
Yeah.
was it just on the agenda so that
I don't think that
it
link
wasn't working?
Let me send you, tell me your email, Shaylee. Do I have it in here? Hang on. Shaylee.
Email you. Thanks, Shannon. All right, next up on the agenda, we're gonna bring in facilities maintenance. And we have our wonderful maintenance director, Sean Fugit, here with us in the chambers. We'll go into the general fund. It's 4160 it's titled Courthouse. And that's where we place the expenses associated with Sean's department. can you tell us if you have any proposed reclassifications or new positions in the maintenance department this year?
Yeah, I'm asking for one more position this year, next year.
One more worker level position. So Sean has workers and techs. And just with the increased building, the worker level handles a lot of the janitorial duties of the building. And we're hoping to kind of build up that crew, and then also some of the paved path maintenance.
Yeah, I felt for years that we've kind of been just barely floating along on what the staff we've had so far.
Thank you.
We've made it by, but you know, year after year, I try and stay on the weeds out there up the pay path, but year after year, they all get 10 feet tall. It's like, so, and then just the buildings are getting older and we're adding buildings. And you guys are talking about adding more pay path to the other side. And I'm sure I'm gonna be maintaining it. Well, as far as weeds and that stuff, Bill does all the road stuff.
Mhm.
So anyway, I was hoping to get another position just to alleviate some of the stress.
All right, thanks for laying that on the table for us. And of course, the commission will consider that
For sure.
more specifically. Have you had any luck in filling, you have a vacancy right now in your crew?
I do. I think we filled it. We're just
Okay.
waiting on his start date.
Congratulations. Awesome. Let's see, we've got a number of lines that remain unchanged from previous years. Shaylee, board member Shaylee Bryant has joined us virtually. Thank you so much, Shaylee. Let's see, let's see. I do want to touch on this 69,000 request for building and grounds maintenance. Let's see, was there a separate spreadsheet that we had associated with that line? Or can we go, I feel like we had more detail in there. Let's see, in utilities, we had left blank. We were still looking at projecting utilities, is that correct?
Yeah.
Let's see, so let's make a note to circle back on that, or let's see, should we look at what 22 actuals were in comparison with this year? I could swear we had put something in there. This is half, the gremlins have gotten the best of us. Because I remember specifically there being a note
It's
about
changed.
about the gas bill.
And it's changed since, from Chris to you, so.
Huh.
And that's not saved.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm gonna put something in here. I'm gonna just put 90,000 in here or something, or, yeah. I see that we spent 91 in 22, 80 in 21. Let's just put that in there for now and revisit. The minutes will reflect that and we can circle back. Vehicle lease payments, we're budgeting for 3 vehicles, even though you currently only have 1 in the, and through the lease program.
Yeah.
And that was approved previously, so we're hoping to carry that same approval over. Fuel has been up, and of course, if you get a couple new vehicles, well, I guess those might be more fuel efficient vehicles.
Hopefully.
But just it's the same as had been in the past. So this building and grounds maintenance, can you talk about what we have in that line? And sorry, I don't have any detail right now to break out. I'm not sure what happened there.
So this is the money I use for just maintaining roughly 14 buildings. Between replacing filters for HVAC systems, repairing them, doing the yard maintenance on them, just the day-to-day wear and tear on a facility. Broken doors, toilets need to be replaced. It's, you name it, that's what we do with it.
Yeah.
So I had more details in my head, but I should have wrote it down.
It's fine. You know, one thing I just want to touch on is that in looking at the historical record for the past 5 years or so, it's gone from 45
Yeah,
to,
so,
and obviously varies from year to year. And if there's something of a little bit of cushion built in there, which is kind of understandable in this case.
well,
But
and
there
then,
is a little bit of a jump that you perhaps this year aren't quite getting to yet or planning to perhaps.
yeah, I think that's pretty much spent,
Okay,
so.
just
they
hasn't quite
haven't
been
showed up.
processed. Yeah.
But the jump was when Chris took the outbuilding budget and the courthouse budget and put them together. There was 30,000 in one and 30,000 the other, or 20,000, I can't remember. We just kind of put it together in one big fund. That was the jump.
Yeah.
And then we just started pulling everything from here. And just,
Yeah.
at the time it made sense and it was easier instead of separating it out.
And that's good context to have. And above all, it doesn't strike me as an outrageous amount for maintenance of the wide array of buildings. Do any members of the board have any questions or concerns regarding that request carrying over? Is more specificity requested in terms of what's planned for that amount, or does that seem reasonable to sort of as if we end up forwarding that as a recommendation? Just
So
so you can-
I have one question, if that's okay.
Please, yes.
Well, so, I mean, I know that from last year to this year, like, I definitely am noticing the difference in the way that these budgets are designed, and I did feel like sometimes there was a little bit of a theme with Chris that, you know, doing what is easier, even if it wasn't the right paper trail. Does it help us in the future be able to disseminate or understand if maybe one building maybe needs some special project attention because the maintenance costs are so high one year, or like, does it help us to separate it so that it's not just lumped into one?
No, because those projects end up becoming capital projects like new roofs or new HVAC, and those just become general fund purchases and big projects.
Yeah, so Shelley, the big projects are generally split out much more with a higher resolution than here. This is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but this is like, you know, sprinkler maintenance at every facility. It's not, there's not one single item in this budget line that would be a huge amount. Those huge amounts are captured in capital projects.
But it doesn't help like provide like context of like, oh dang, like this had a way more sprinkler maintenance, so maybe that proves why we need a capital project to replace them and not just fix them over and over again. I don't know if it provides that history or not, so you guys are the experts. I just was wondering.
I think generally speaking, Sean provides us that history. But you're right, your point is well taken.
Yes.
I can see the value in what you're saying, Shaylee, but then I think we would be adding admin staff to help him provide all that information, so it's kind of a toss-up. It would take away from what he's doing already.
I will say, and don't take this the wrong way, Sean, I like in these lines, I like seeing there, you know, there are some departments that are able to provide exhaustive detail, like I'm gonna need 16 sprinkler heads next year, and I'm gonna need 14 of these things, and then you really just kind of plan it out based on, you know, what you actually expect, and yeah, it's just an estimate, but it allows you to make adjustments based on rising costs of individual items, and it could be something that you might explore. I'm not downplaying the amount of work it would be, but it could be valuable.
In a perfect world, I would love to provide the detail of every single building and project what we're gonna need, all the little details, but that's a lot of buildings.
You're just trying to keep your head above water.
Yeah, I mean, if I had,
Understood.
I'm gonna go into it, so.
Yeah. And then capital improvements, we're gonna jump all the way down here. We had 18,000 approved in 2023. And the request for 2024 is only 2,000. And we haven't even spent any of that 18,000. Can you give us some background? There's a note I have for dark sky lighting. What I seem to remember is that $2,000 will allow us to become compliant potentially with dark sky lighting
Yes.
regulation.
So originally, I asked, I think originally we put like 20,000 in there in 2022. And, I went and purchased the lights for certain buildings to get it dark skies compliant. And we just didn't know how much it was gonna cost, if we were gonna need electricians or my staff can do it. And as of now, my staff has been able to do it themselves. And so, and we started 20,000, and over the years, we just kind of took a little out of there as like a savings account, I guess, is how Chris had set it up. And so he would just, the least amount, or the amount that we had spent, he would just move that over to the next year. And I think 2,000's fine, as long as I don't, like I said, the EOC needs lights for dark skies compliancy. And I'm pretty sure my staff can do it, but if I have to hire an electrician, then that's gonna be probably coming out of my 69,000 general fund. And that's the little things that come out of that general fund.
But in some, it turns out it had been way overshot, the costs associated with
Yeah.
dark sky
And we
compliance.
just didn't know what it was gonna
If it
require.
was gonna be like a bunch of new fixtures
Yeah.
and contractors and things of that nature, and it turns out it's kind of just unscrewing and screwing.
Well,
I mean, more than that, of
replacing
course.
fixtures, yeah, because they have to be fully shielded.
For sure.
Like that, So,
Thanks for
Yeah.
getting us there. I know that's been a concern. There's some inventory requests here. Are these carried over from last year's approved budget?
some of them are carried over. I was gonna just, since it's the end of the year, I was gonna just wait and do the gas blowers next year.
Okay,
I know you put that this year, on that little subject line. And then I think everything else I'll get this year. So I think that was the only thing that was doubled up. We'll just wait till next year to get leaf blowers. And a few extra other things that I was requesting for next year.
and so just for the record, you have approved for this year the purchase of shelving, a TV monitor for your office,
Yes.
printer, ADA bottle filling station, that's in the courthouse,
Mhm.
and a key cabinet.
Yes.
I remember that. And for this year, there's a commercial mower at 2,500, 2 gas blowers at 150, 8-foot double-sided ladder, 300, tow behind rough cut mower for the pay pack at 3,000, a new edger at 500, and a shop vac at 250, totaling $6,850.
Yes.
Which is a slight increase from the approved request in 2023. Are there any questions that the board has, or any other questions that the board has regarding expenses for our hardworking maintenance supervisor?
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Yeah.
I would like to touch on schooling.
Yeah.
I last minute, I realized the USU was offering some classes.
Yeah, they fixed up some of their offerings, so there's like a maintenance certification now and whatnot.
And then like a heavy equipment certification, which would be
Nice.
kind of nice to kind of get some of the guys just, trained on HVAC and carpentry and some of those other things.
Yeah, I think OSTA might be taking advantage of some of that coursework.
So
So,
Sean, we can look at that and up it and maybe chat about it a little bit more.
yeah, I did some math and, I think if I was to have the guys do all 4 courses and all the guys do all 4 courses, like $4,000, almost $5,000. But I don't necessarily think we need to do that all at once.
Sure.
And I'm sure we can pick and choose courses individually depending on their talent
Yeah.
and experience.
And rotate them through.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
rotate them and, yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
And then
The
just
US
recently, they did the heavy equipment, which would be nice to get some forklift certifications going for county.
The USU courses are very reasonably priced. The maintenance certification is like $147
Yeah.
a module, so $147 a module per person.
So,
Okay, so I'm just noting here that we may end up adding $2,000 or $3,000 in there for USU coursework. And the board is supportive of such an expenditure. Thanks, Sean. Hey,
Cool.
Did you have anything else?
no, I'm good.
All right,
Yeah, no, you guys are
perfect.
good.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, no problem. Please have a good one.
Sue.
Thanks, Sean.
Have fun, Bill.
All right, and finally, for department presentations, the last one we have is our chief building inspector and floodplain supervisor, Bill Hulse.
I know, right?
That's in the building inspector account. Yeah.
Shaylee's still on.
Right, sure, it's still on.
I'm gonna hang out. I thought about it. I'm about to go, but I'll hang out for a couple more minutes.
What do you think?
Thank you.
Bill, be quick.
Been stressing over this all morning.
I know.
Get her done.
And you sat there patiently.
You had to walk so much further to get here.
It's becoming a little bit of exercise. Trimming down a little bit. It's the big house.
All right, thanks for being here. It looks like you're not proposing any reclassifications or new position requests in the building department for
No,
this-
I-
for 2024?
Did want to just double check and make sure that we adjusted for Corey being hired on at the higher rate.
Yes, and I think that was actually taken care of in the amendment as well. But I've added it in and of course, salaries in there for 24. What we don't have in there quite yet is our COLA. So
Great, thanks for handling that and confirming. There's a little bit of a reclassification here in subscriptions and memberships, and so it sees an increase because we're taking the iWork software that tracks the permitting from a different line that's professional and technical, which we see as going down from 4,000 to 1,000, and accordingly subscriptions and memberships is going up from 1,500 to 4,000. And it looks like there's actually a net decrease between those two lines.
It might end up having to go back up. With our subscriptions and memberships, by putting iWorks in there, that's 33,050. We just added another 400 and something to that.
Okay.
But with our memberships and certification renewals, we've got to be members of the Utah chapter, members of ICC, members of the ASFPM for floodplain. And then every 3 years, ICC, I have to renew my certifications. Every 2 years, I have to renew my license. And then ASFPM, I have to renew my certifications every 2 years. So it goes up and down. I tried figuring if there was an average I could use, or I actually had it planned out for 4 years down each one, and then Cole left and Corey came on, and now Corey's certified, so it got all screwy.
I went ahead and bumped it up to 4,500 to just make a net. It's the same request essentially between 210 and 310, and potentially that'll help in sort of giving covering everything.
Yeah, and if there's an off year where I don't have to renew certifications, there may be some extra in there at the end of the year that will carry over or give back. And
Okay. Public notices, let's see, we had increased budgeted for this year and haven't really that's because we haven't gotten into some projects that we planned on doing
Right.
noticing for.
we did put out tax notices, and we put mailers in the tax notice again.
Okay.
So we'll be getting billed for that from Chris.
Mhm.
That's not showing up there yet.
Good to
We
know.
did plan on a bunch more outreach, that with the flooding and the grants we were working on, we just didn't get around to it. But this
Okay.
year, we're working on that brick grant. It's gonna be a pretty big one. We're gonna have some town halls. We're gonna have to do some public noticing, some flyers. Plus, we still have to do more outreach for CRS. We're gonna try to get down to a class 7 this year, so.
What's CRS?
Community rating system, it's a above and beyond program with the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program. So the lower classification we are, right now, we're an 8, the city is a 9. I'm trying to get us to a 7, which we would be one of 2 counties in Utah that are class 7. So,
That's great.
and that would guarantee 15% discounts for folks in the special flood hazard area on their premiums and 10% for folks outside.
Great. You provided some good detail here regarding the conferences that your office needs to attend, ICC National Conference, to Utah chapter ICC conferences, ASFPM, floodplain conferences, and 3,000 will cover those specific traffic.
Yeah,
those
and
specific conferences.
again, with that line item, when Corey was here, and even when I was going to the national conferences, we try to get on the board or committee, and that way ICC is reimbursing us. We still had to have that money in line item to be able to buy the tickets and to pay for the rooms, and then we get the reimbursement, it gets turned back in.
Okay. Looks like lease vehicle payment is more or less getting carried over. It looks like you made a note that, there might be a time soon to get new vehicles and that number could go down. Is that due to fuel efficiency or?
Yes, yeah.
Or just different, that wouldn't be fuel efficiency, I guess. That
The
would be.
lease payment, because we're turning those vehicles in, the way that Cody has that set up.
That's when it would start paying for itself.
Extra equity built up in it, so when we sell it back for about the same price, we get the new one. And it keeps dropping that lease payment.
Ooh, that'll be good to start seeing that pay off.
Yeah. Yeah, we are gonna go to 2 Rangers this year. We went with what is the Chevy?
Like a Traverse or something?
It's the smaller
Equinox?
Equinox, yeah, I went with an Equinox, and it's not bad, around town stuff, but I had to go do an inspection out of Pack Creek this spring. And it was on the other side of the creek, and I had to go through that crossing. There was only about 6 inches of water. It went through fine. It was the mud pits on either side of it that got me a little squirrely, and thought, that Ranger probably wouldn't be bad for both vehicles.
Yeah.
And they're both getting about 29 miles to the gallon, so.
We budget in 1,000 for inspections while you're out at conferences and things. We had a 4,000 approved in there this year. Is there a reason why that's lower or why we have
That's where
that?
we got the iWorks from.
Oh,
the
right.
iWorks.
Oh, I'm sorry. We already covered that. My bad. Cell phone allowance, straightforward. We've got money budgeted in for code and reference books as well as employee clothing allowance. That's the same as approved in 23.
Yeah, we have to keep 3 copies of the code books. We just adopted the 2021 codes. Last year's budget, I bought 2 sets. This year's budget, I bought the loose leaf set, and we're gonna end up having to get the digital set, so.
And it looks like 1,200 here represents a scheduled replacement of a desktop computer in your office.
It's not.
Okay.
No, that was more.
New office
New
furnishings.
office miscellaneous stuff. As we don't have anything on the wall. I wanted to steal that. But I didn't think I'd get away with it. But we need some stuff on the walls. It's pretty echoey in there, and with it being so open, we need some furnishings in there to quiet things down, and it's kind of hard to have a conversation when you can hear what planning is talking about in our side.
Okay. And are you able to, money that was budgeted this year as well, just in general for maybe, capital kind of things that could, because what we're talking about here wouldn't be capital expenses, but are you able to get, all of those, use that budgeted money for capital expenses to kind of complete that split space as needed, in the way that you can or want? Do you know what I mean? I guess. I guess that I'm trying to think if there were some bigger items like windows and things that you were hoping to get done.
We got the one switched out. There are some others, but I'm finding out from our window guy that they don't sell just the trim pieces. So it's not like we can switch out that glass and get new trim pieces to make them look pretty. Those trim pieces are starting to warp, twist up. They're all discolored. When we replace those, we're gonna have to cut those out and put in replacement windows. We're not gonna be able to just swap out the glass like we did on the last one.
So not quite gonna be able to sneak those in this year.
Yeah, no, and most of them are in pretty decent shape. They're ugly, but they work, they perform. Their air seals aren't broken yet, so they're still performing decent. They do have good tint on them, and we got blinds in there, so.
Yeah.
The countertops, we just got the bid for the countertops that should be going through. But again, that's not coming out of any of these line items. It was
Right.
the building leftovers.
Well, I would encourage you to try to get those in.
I was out there grading
I'd love to
today,
close it
trying
up.
to get some landscaping ready, prepped.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're trying to get as much of that stuff. Well, I'm not gonna say as much of it. I don't like to do anything that doesn't need to be done.
Certainly.
Sometimes I don't even like doing things that need to be done if they can be put off for a little bit, but yeah, we're gonna try to get a lot of the big stuff done so we can get in there, be comfortable and get through the first year and figure out what we need for the inventory stuff.
One more expense line here, schooling. I think there had been talk before about us not having to front the cost of the contractor classes, because this is something that we typically get reimbursed for.
Right. Typically, the contractor classes, we were taking all the money, paying for the instructor, paying for DOPL submissions for the contractors, paying for lunch breaks. We've been working with USU for about 9 years now, putting these classes on. The state came through and said that building departments and code groups couldn't put on continuing education for contractors. It had to be home builders associations or a state agency or accredited college. So we partnered with USU because didn't think the ABC would be that great of a partner for code classes.
Okay. But not quite ready to make the full
We're
switch over.
turning those over. This year, they took on the responsibility for collecting the money, submitting to DOPL, paying for the food. We already had the instructors set up, so we're covering those costs. I believe by the time we get to next year, they're gonna take over the whole thing. We're just gonna be suggesting the setting up the classes and the instructors, and they're gonna take care of the whole thing and pay for the instructors, so.
Okay, thanks for.
We'll still have to keep, I think we used to carry about 3,000 in there for our schooling.
Right.
And so the schooling budget used to be just for our schooling.
Right.
The other stuff was done through a pass-through account. So there was 3 accounts, one for revenue, one for expense, and one for carrying over to the next year.
Mm-hmm.
When Diana was here, she emptied that budget into the general fund. So when we went to do a class that following year, we had no money in that account. There was about 7,000 in there the year before. So then we set it up as that revolving fund so that it didn't get stolen. And then Chris decided it wasn't worth the line item and the issue, just add it to your schooling budget and we'll just use it as a floating revolving account. Like I said, a lot of that money came back. So when we budgeted for 10,000 at the end of the year, we probably had 8,000 left in the budget.
Okay. Thanks.
So that should go way down next year.
Yeah, thanks for facilitating that service, and I hope you do get a chance to spend some, budget some money in for schooling for your own, you and your staff, and I'm sure our local contractors appreciate that being available locally so that they don't have to drive to Price and things for this.
Standing room only this year.
We had a guy that was signed up for one online. He was gonna pay $260 for 6 hours. And it wasn't gonna cover the 3 hours or the 1 hour of energy code. Our class was $70, $35 if you use custom fit through the USU. And it covered every one of the hours. He actually called and canceled his class and came to ours.
Nice.
It was a packed house. I don't know how many there were in that room. I mean, I was there for my license, but there must have
We had
been
I think
50
the
people.
total was, in the room, we had 42 plus our staff. And I think there was a total of, 59 or 60 altogether in 3 campuses. We broadcast from Moab to Blanding and Price campus and to everybody in their emails at home. So we had people from all over the country at our class.
That's great leadership. Any questions from the board about the expense side of the building department, building inspectors department?
No, but I gotta hop off and go get some kids.
All right. One thing actually, before we move on, utilities, will that be covered in the maintenance department's budget?
That was kind of left
Okay,
vague
that's in my
in the
ball, that
conversation.
ball might still be in my court.
Yeah, we weren't quite sure.
And then it would
When
be
we
split with
originally
Keys.
did it, Chris set up an account for us to do our own utilities, had them put them in our name. And
Okay.
then turned around and said, no, they should be lumped in with the facilities. And then changed back to, no, those need to be budgeted.
Well, we
So
started
I have
coding,
no idea
we
where to do
started
it.
coding stuff here, so it seems, yeah, it seems like there is some confusion there, which I can sort out for sure. It's not, that's not, doesn't.
Yeah, either way,
Not too
I just need
daunting.
to know if we need to, between me and Elisa, need to budget for that, or if it's gonna be taken out of Sean's budget, same with the maintenance stuff. That's why we kind of had that one line item that we were trying to use for other than routine maintenance. His general cleaning stuff, his changing out lighting and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. And then building permits, I asked you for a projection, those. In the last few years, we've been up at 250, 280. This year, we're up at 230. We budgeted 260, and then so, you're projecting a little bit of a downturn in fees related to
I
building
think
permits.
so. Country Inn and Suites pushed us up a little bit this year, got us closer.
You said how much was that one alone?
80,000. We have,
Which one's that?
Country Inn and Suites,
Hmm.
motel and cruise property.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna see any new motels with our new overnight accommodations ordinance. I don't think we're gonna have another motel built for Grant County. There are a couple of big, like Sage Creek was planning on doing 3 buildings. I think they were about 30,000 per, which if they pulled those 3 this year, that would put us at our target, a little bit over, plus all the little miscellaneous stuff. Next year, I don't know that we're gonna have a whole lot of big projects. We're gonna have, building hasn't slowed down. We're still kicking out permits, but we're talking $2,000 permits, not $30,000, $60,000 permits. So we're slowing down on some of the bigger stuff. But Arroyo Crossing is getting ready to do some apartments out there, and Sage Creek's always threatening to build more buildings.
And frankly, we took in 12,000 and some change for an airport hangar today.
Yeah.
Airplane hangar.
Which one was that?
Rusty?
Oh, is it Rusty's? Yeah, that building's been sitting out there for a while.
We've got some
Okay.
Go
That
runs with them.
sounds reasonable to me.
What's that?
They're not easy to work with,
Oh, yeah. Him or his people?
his people.
Yeah.
That sounds like a reasonable explanation for a little bit of a lowering of that
Sure.
revenue.
We always hope we're gonna be
Sure.
up, but again, with me, I'd hate to plug in a high number and not get there.
Yeah.
With revenue, I'd rather be a little on the short side. If we go over, great bonus. If we're under, then it kind of hurts.
Yeah.
We like to we always try to stay in the red with our budget. Just doesn't happen anymore.
Right. Anything I'm missing or any other comments that you want to make? Regarding the budget?
Other than the fact that I don't have a line item for floodplain,
Right.
I rely on Bill Jackson. I steal his budget for projects, and Cora's been really good about letting me steal money from her budget for outreach and stuff, and help do some advertising, things like that. So at some point, I don't know if the commission wants to put together a line item or a budget item for floodplain or stormwater. I want to mix that in with what we were talking about with Bill Jackson and the county engineer, and really start getting into the stormwater and floodplain stuff.
We're starting to take up a huge amount of time, just with what we're doing with San Juan County.
Yeah.
I mean, for both you and I.
Yeah, it's a definite, thankfully I've got good staff. Being able to hire Corey fully certified, was a godsend. There's no way we would have made it through the next couple of years. I would have been brain dead and spinning wheel. But being able to hire him, it's taken a lot of load off. I am able to sit in meetings for brick grants and do a lot of that legwork that there's no way I would be able to without. So, but if we do plan on getting bigger into this brick grant. Bill was talking about some storm drainage stuff. I don't know necessarily know if it needs to be in my budget. Just want to make sure I can help spend it.
It's gonna take a little bit of everybody. Dan Stenza, you.
Yeah, Bill Jackson.
Bill
We-
Jackson.
We worked pretty well together. With the addition of Dan, I can't thank you guys enough for finally giving me an engineer. It's made my job a lot easier. We get in these meetings with other engineers and FEMA and a lot of it's over my head. I'm no engineer.
I will say too, in a few meetings I've been in with Dan, his insight and perspective has been super valuable.
He's been around forever.
He's been around forever. He knows the area, the soil, the rain patterns. Perfect fit.
Right. And so we've been using this Fund 18 stormwater mitigation for something like the brick grant match.
And I think
And
we're
that
getting the
seems
final
more or
piece
less
of that.
appropriate because this is separated from the B roads money because we can't use that B roads money on stormwater. So it stands to reason that it would go in here, but I agree with your idea that like formalizing how we treat floodplain management in the budgeting process is warranted.
Okay.
Great.
All righty.
Well, thanks, Mr. Holtz. Thanks for all your hard work. That's the last department presentation that we had scheduled for today. I don't have any future considerations in mind. Does the board at this time? Seeing none? No.
No, shit isn't on.
Seeing none, I will adjourn this meeting at 4:31 PM. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks guys.